My name's Stephanie Carroll. I'm the Directing Attorney for the Consumer Rights and Economic Justice team here at Public Counsel. This series of webinars is brought to you by a collaborative of legal services organisations, including Tzedek, who are presenting tonight, the East LA Community Corporation, Housing and Economic Rights Advocates, the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, National Housing Law Project, Neighborhood Legal Services of LA, and Public Counsel. Tonight is the last webinar in our consumer series for wildfire survivors and is focused on avoiding scams. As you know, this session is being recorded in English and Spanish, and we will make it available on our website and those of our partners. Public Counsel is committed to language justice and accessibility, and we're constantly trying to improve our practices. Please bear with us if there are any glitches. We are aiming to be as inclusive as possible. Please let us know if you have any other language or access needs. When we are sharing screens, you will see the slides and the presenter side by side. You can use the white tab in the middle of the screen as a slider to shift the size of the screen share or to the speakers. After the presentation, we will do our best to answer any questions. But please note, this is a Know Your Rights session. It's not intended to answer any specific legal questions. If you have a specific legal problem, you should consult with an attorney separately. So tonight, our guest speaker is Dani Kaiserman. Dani is a staff attorney in the Elder Justice Unit at Tzedek Legal Services in LA. Dani represents low-income clients seeking elder abuse remedies, including restraining orders, conservatorships, and advanced planning documents. She specialises in financial elder abuse, assisting victims and educating consumers about financial scams. In October 2017, Dani co-founded the Tzedek Elder Abuse Restraining Order Clinic at Stanley Moss Courthouse, where she advises self-help litigants petitioning for and responding to restraining orders. Dani graduated from UCLA School of Law in May 2015 as a member of the David J. Epstein Program in Public Interest Law and Policy. Prior to law school, Dani worked as the program manager at the National Academy on an Aging Society, a non-profit in Washington, D.C. that focuses on aging policy. We're delighted to have her tonight. Dani, please take it away. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here talking about protecting yourself from scams after natural disasters. This is a really important topic for many reasons. Everyone can be a victim of a scam. Even I have been a victim of a scam. So, especially for the folks who were impacted by the fires, it's very important to educate yourself to prevent you from becoming a victim and share what you know today with others as well. One thing I'll say about the fires is that we saw a lot of wonderful acts of kindness come out of them. We saw mutual aid organizing and GoFundMe campaigns. But unfortunately, the other side of the coin is they also bring out scammers. And these scammers take advantage of people who experienced hardships from the fire. We all know that trauma causes heightened states of emotion after disasters, and unfortunately, the scammers know that too. So today's session is all about protecting yourself. Social connection, I always like to talk about because it's the best tip for preventing scams. We know that when people are isolated, they are more prone to being victim to a scam. So after an event like a fire, you're displaced from your community, from your neighbors, and that can be really challenging and isolating. So because of that, we have to work even harder to protect yourself. And I always like to say, look out for your older neighbors as well, because I've heard a lot of folks who were impacted by the fires connecting with their neighbors on WhatsApp and group text messages. And that's a wonderful way to stay connected and updated and share information. But sometimes older neighbors are left out of those tools. So make sure you're still calling and checking in on your older neighbors when you're able to. Today, I'm going to be going over 6 types of scams: insurance scams, government scams, charity and tax scams. That's technically 2. Contractor scams, utility scams, and identity theft. What I'll do is explain what each scam looks like and then tips for protecting yourself against each scam. And then towards the end of the presentation, we'll review some general tips as well. So insurance scams, these are kind of the first that I typically hear about after a disaster. So for those fortunate enough to have insurance, we're hearing stories of people reaching out to homeowners and renters, if you had renters insurance as well, and impersonating insurance companies. So, what they might do is they may say, we can help you with your claim, but you need to pay us some fees up front. Or they may ask you for personal information and then later sell that information online. We're also hearing feedback that a common tactic that fraudulent insurance individuals or representatives are using is that they'll say, you need to pay us right away or you're going to lose your coverage. And we'll see that's a pattern with a lot of these scams, that they're asking you to act quickly or right away or something bad's going to happen. So the way to avoid being scammed by an insurance company is to be the first one to make contact. And you want to do your research and make sure that you're contacting the insurer through the right number. Google is not always our friend when you're trying to verify information. What you would want to do is look on your insurance policy documents and make sure that you're calling that insurer and not necessarily whatever pops up on Google. Definitely be wary when someone's reaching out to you first, because typically with insurance claims, you're going to be the one who needs to reach out to them. So it's a red flag if they're calling you. And then you can always ask for identification if someone shows up at your door saying that they're from an insurance company. And again, a common tactic is trying to pressure you into quick action. And normal insurance companies don't act that way. There are deadlines that are the same for everyone, like 30 days to file or 60 days to file. It's never, you have to pay today or you won't be covered. Government scams are also very common. I would say with the Eden and Palisades fires, That's what I've been hearing about most. So, in these scams, we have scammers impersonating government agencies like the Small Business Administration and FEMA. I've heard of them offering free money essentially through government grants, which in reality go to organizations, not individuals. So you always have to be skeptical when you hear about programs for free money. There are some free government programs, so I'm not going to tell you today that it doesn't exist, but you really need to vet any programs that you're hearing about through the agency website. And these scammers can contact you in person, online, even through social media. So again, we always want to make sure that you're reaching out directly to the agency and being wary of people who are contacting you first. You want to verify their identity if they are reaching out to you. You can always ask for a callback number and then do your own research online and make sure that that number matches the agency number that you're seeing through a government website. Um, Another thing that fraudulent government impersonators do is they'll ask you for a lot of information up front before you get a chance to even verify. And you want to be really careful about giving out personal identifying information like social security numbers, even dates of birth, all those sorts of things without first making sure that you're talking to the government entity that they're claiming to be. And something else to watch out for when you're receiving phone calls from government agencies is that scammers are very sophisticated and they can actually spoof, is what it's called. So they'll make it seem like they're calling from a government agency, and on your phone, it may even say FEMA or SBA for Small Business Administration. But really, the scammers can control what it looks like on your phone. So don't trust the caller ID that comes up. That's not a good verification method. So next we'll talk about charity and tax scams. Disasters, unfortunately, often bring out fraudulent charities and they start soliciting donations for relief work. They may create a new charity using words like help and relief plus Eden Fire or plus Palisades Fire, as a way to specifically garner donations based on that natural disaster. So uh, and then something else they do is often say that they work with real charities like the Red Cross. They could also be claiming to be the Red Cross when in fact they have no affiliation with the Red Cross. So you want to watch out for that and always verify by asking for their website. And there are certain tips I'll give you on the next slide for how to make sure that it's an actual charity website. And then on the tax side of things, we're hearing reports of scammers saying that they work for the IRS and that they will file casualty loss claims or that you're entitled to a big refund. They might say, you're entitled to a big refund, but first pay us X amount of money. or sometimes these scams work solely to collect your personal information and then later sell them to criminals. So you want to always work with charities and donate to charities and services that you know and trust. The other thing with charity scams is they don't only victimize people who are looking to donate out of the goodness of their hearts, but they also victimize the people impacted by the fires because you could get a call from someone claiming to be through from X charity that, they want to give you some free money, again with the free money. But in fact, you have to pay a small fee first, or, just give them $100 to secure that you're on the wait list for the donation. So they work in a lot of different ways, unfortunately. But it is very common because people after these disasters, like do open their pocketbooks, but you want to make sure that it's going to a verifiable charity. So do your research. There's a lot of online websites like Charity Navigator, GuideStar, even Better Business Bureau has resources, the IRS Charity Register for you to make sure that you're donating to a real organization that's doing good work. You can also, as I mentioned, ask for a website for that organization and make sure that the link starts with HTTPS because the S means that it's a secure link. Also, a .org website, signals some nonprofit status as opposed to other types of websites. So that might be one factor that you consider. But in general, you want to look at these different resources such as Charity Navigator to make sure it's a legitimate charity. And then if someone is contacting you claiming to be from the IRS to help you with a loss claim, I would just pause right there and reach out to the IRS directly using the number that's listed here. That's going to be just the safest way to make sure that they're actually calling from the IRS. And typically, unless you've reached out to them, the IRS doesn't usually contact you offering their services. So it's always better to reach out to them first. So yesterday, this series included a wonderful presentation on contractor scams. So today, I'm just going to briefly go through kind of what they are and some very basic prevention tips. But I encourage you to watch the recorded video of yesterday's session when that's released if you want to learn more, because these are going to be a huge problem especially with so many people rebuilding at once. So it's important to educate yourself. The way contractor scams works is typically a dishonest contractor will contact you and they might do sloppy work or leave the job unfinished or halfway finished. And they could be contacting you through door to door. They may make unrealistic or false promises. And again, similar to other scams, they're probably going to try to rush you to act quickly. So they might say, listen, your neighbor's interested in hiring me too, but if you sign up today, then I'll make sure that we work on your house first. So that's how they're gonna try to pressure you into signing the contracts, quicker than you're comfortable doing so. To avoid contractor scams, it's always important to check a contractor's license, their insurance status, and references from past clients as well. It's our recommendation that you get written estimates from three different contractors and also to use a written contract to detail the work scope and cost. That contract should be updated if there are changes made to the scope of work as the construction or building starts. We also recommend using credit card when possible because it is easier to contest those charges later on versus cash. You're kind of out of luck. Then that would have to go to a lawsuit, and um, yeah, that can be harder to get your money back if something goes wrong. We also always recommend not paying for the full amount up front and not signing off on the final work if you're not happy with it or if it's not complete. I just did an intake last week where this happened. The person trusted the contractor's word that they were going to finish the project. And in fact, they didn't and left the house a huge mess. The roof wasn't done, but they had signed off that the work was completed because they trusted the contractor. So be careful to only sign off and pay once you're happy with the work that's done. Another tip is to get a copy of the contract in the language that you negotiated in. And that is your right. So if you negotiated the contract in Spanish, they are entitled to give you a copy in Spanish. I also always warn people to watch out for electronic signatures with contracts. If you're comfortable signing electronically and you have the ability to print and review everything carefully, that's fine. But if you're not comfortable on a screen, you really want to verify that the contract is as discussed. And therefore, we often recommend printing the full written contract and signing that copy as opposed to an electronic signature. So utility scams involve water, power, electricity. The scammers may show up at the property wearing fake vests, those bright orange or bright yellow, and claim to be from Edison or whatever utility company is operating in that neighborhood. And they may offer to restore service for a fee or investigate a gas leak or inspect new equipment. We're seeing more and more online advertisements from utility companies where they may have a QR code offering services that make it really easy to pay. Um, and I think a big problem here, again, is Google, unfortunately. So, if you're having to move to a temporary location, people are just Googling, like, who is my utility provider? And unfortunately, that isn't always get you the most accurate information. So you want to make sure that you go to a reputable website. In California, we have the California Public Utilities Commission, and that is a government, .gov website where you can look into who your provider is for the area. And they actually have a whole page on consumer protections available, including waived fees for victims of disasters and payment plans. So I just urge you not to pay money to utility companies without doing your research first, because there are a lot of wonderful programs right now being offered to victims of the fire where you might not have to pay anything. And so it's definitely a red flag if someone's saying, pay me 250 bucks today. Also, utility companies are not allowed to promise you like a quicker restoration if you give them more money. So again, those are tactics to look out for. So I pulled this headline and photo from the Los Angeles Times. It says they lost everything in the Palisades fire, then someone stole one of their identities. And we've already seen a few cases at Tzedek of this coming up. Identity theft is super common after fires. I mean, to be honest, it's common anyways. And what it is the crime of obtaining someone's personal or financial information and using their identity to commit fraud. So, in a lot of the previous scams, I talked about how sometimes the goal is to get money out of you, and sometimes the goal is to get your personal information. And what they do with this personal information is, that's where the identity theft comes in. So it could be opening credit in your name. It could be applying for government benefits on your behalf and then taking those benefits. And we've seen, especially in more recent years, now that so much has moved online, it's really increased identity theft because after disaster, you don't have a lot of your documentation. You're starting over, getting even some of the most basic government IDs and paperwork. So there's not a lot to verify who you are. And if you go to, FEMA, for example, and apply for FEMA online, they may not require you to put in that much verifying information because you don't have a stable address, you don't have your documents. A lot of times you just enter an email. So what we're seeing is scam artists and people using identity theft to apply for government benefits on behalf of people whose identity that they've stolen. And I just wanted to mention that with the identity theft, we've seen that both with FEMA and also Small Business Administration loans. I just heard a story yesterday where two neighbors shared information about a loan that was available. They both went to apply for that loan and were both told, oh, you've already applied, which was not the case. So then you've got to deal with the identity theft, which we'll talk about in a minute. So to monitor for fraud, you want to check your financial statements and also run credit reports. So the most reputable website to access your credit reports is Annual Credit Report. There are also phone numbers available for these websites. Equifax, Experian, TransUnion are the three companies, and it should be free. You should not be paying for a credit report. If after looking at your credit report, you see that there is some identity theft on there because there's loans that you didn't take out or other credit items come up that don't belong to you, that's when you want to go ahead and report identity theft. Also, if you were to apply for FEMA and you were told, oh, someone else has already applied, another time when you would want to report identity theft. Uh, you definitely want to start by reporting it to the Federal Trade Commission. They have a really straightforward website. It's pretty user friendly. If you do need help though, because it can be a lot, you're already dealing with so much, you can reach out to the ID Theft Resource Center, which is a nonprofit that can actually walk you through the steps of reporting identity theft. We also always recommend that you get a report from law enforcement. So, in addition to reporting identity theft, if you're reviewing your credit report and you are seeing fraudulent transactions, you do want to report that both directly with the creditor and also the credit reporting agency. And they're going to want to see that you've reported it to those organizations that I mentioned on the last slide as well, and also to the police. I do recommend in cases of identity theft, considering credit freezes or credit alerts. The difference is that a credit freeze is a full stop on accessing your credit. So it wouldn't allow you to, let's say, buy a new car on credit if you have a freeze going on. Now, an alert is slightly less protection that enables a multi-factor authentication process, but it doesn't automatically stop any credit from being taken out. So typically for people who have been a victim of identity theft, I would suggest a freeze, and then you can always unfreeze if you need your credit to be pulled for some reason, like if you are buying a car or you need it for rental housing applications. And a couple other cybersecurity tips. After a fire, you may have lost your computer or paperwork, and a lot of people rely on their phones. And just to make sure that you are uploading any important information on your phone to cloud services. So that could be photos you're taking of damage or of, you know, utility bills, anything that you have just on your phone. Make sure that it's accessible in case your phone is stolen or you lose your phone as well. Also, uh, passwords are really important. Uh, I'm the worst at this, so I can hardly uh, tell you what to do, but you want to, if possible, use a password management service to create really strong passwords and enable multi-factor authentication when possible as well. So we've talked about a lot of different types of scams today, and now we're going to just touch on a few of the trends in all of them. So again, these are red flags to look out for. So people coming to you to offer services that you didn't reach out for, asking you to pay fees. FEMA will never ask for funds. That's a big one. Asking you to pay in advance. I've had friends who have lost money to different rental property scams where they've paid a deposit without even seeing the inside of a place. Like they were told to drive by, but they had to act quickly to secure the rental location, and especially in this rental market where we know it's so hard on fire victims to find affordable places. You might be tempted to put some money down to reserve, and you just need to be really careful because they could be doing that to tons of people. I've heard of cases where, they'll tell you to drive by a place, but last minute they're not available to take you inside, and it's likely because they don't actually have the authorization to rent that place. So be really careful with advance fees and the renting context. Another huge red flag, anytime they're asking for payments in crypto, gift cards, or prepaid debit cards. I know some of you might be rolling your eyes like, I don't use crypto, but I can't tell you how many scams targeting even older adults. They involve crypto and they will talk older adults through the whole crypto wallet process. So that's just a huge red flag right there. And then pressuring consumers into quick action. Again, that's you always want to take your time with these decisions, and legitimate government organizations and others, they won't make you decide something that day by the end of the call. That's not how they operate. So we want to always watch out for phishing emails and text messages. I know sometimes scrolling on social media, something looks totally legitimate and it's really easy to click and something seems like, a charity that you want to donate to. But you have to be really careful, especially again, going back to being in a heightened emotional state. Sometimes, we get caught up in the moment. Another tip, if you are paying for things, if there is a fee for something, try to use a credit card and avoid other platforms like just wire transfers, again, crypto, gift cards, or cash, because with credit cards, you can later contest any issues you have if it turns out to be, a fraudulent organization or something like that. I also like to tell people about this view only option. So, especially for folks who maybe have a history of not making the best financial decisions, it's a great idea if you have a trusted person in your life to put them as this view only access on your bank account. And that way they can spot and flag any concerning behavior that they see. For example, like a wire transfer that is very out of the ordinary for you. And again, when you give someone trusted access or view only access, they wouldn't be able to spend your money. So there's a layer of protection for you as well. But you do only want to give that to someone that you trust. And advanced planning is another option. Again, if you need some help managing your finances and maybe you've been a victim of scams in the past, you might want to consider appointing a power of attorney for finances or even something more informal like a supported decision maker to help you with those decisions in the future. Here's a few more general tips. You want to avoid making decisions while emotional, which I know can be hard, especially in the immediate aftermath of a disaster. You want to not make decisions in a hurry or feel rushed. And then just be wary of unsolicited help and always contact the agency or company directly. Here are a few organizations that you can report to if you have been a victim of a scam. And I know a lot of people say, what's the point in reporting? The money's gone, or reporting's not going to get my money back. But it is helpful for authorities to track scams and to track the different patterns to warn others. And occasionally there actually are law enforcement actions against these fraudsters. And even more rarely, but it happens once in a blue moon, victims are able to recover some funds based on a law enforcement action. Again, I wouldn't report for that reason, but it is a good idea to report to help others. If you are reporting a scam, here's a list of things that you can include. your name, your address, telephone, and email, copies of text messages or images, any wire transactions or gift card types or crypto account numbers. It's really going to vary depending on the scam, but here's a list that you can reference. And then lastly, I always like to mention victim resources because on top of everything else that you're going through, if you are a victim of a scam, there's a big emotional component, especially if you have lost a lot. That can be really hard emotionally to grapple with. And because of that, there are actually support groups that exist for financial fraud victims. And really, I encourage you to think of this as a crime. You should never feel stupid for falling for a scam. I don't like to use that language, in fact, because you were a victim of a financial crime. You didn't do anything wrong. You know, you were targeted by very sophisticated people. And, you know, it's very hard to recover from that, not just financially, but emotionally as well. So I'd encourage you to check out these support groups if you have been a victim and want to talk to other people in a similar situation. And with that, I think we're ready for some questions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dani. So I would ask that folks in the audience, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A. Or if you prefer to sign or say your question, please raise your hand and we will give you the ability to come off mute. And I would also say if there's anybody else who has any advice to give in particular, to feel free to raise your hand. One thing I wanted to just raise, Dani, which I'm sure you've heard too, is that when FEMA contact people, they contact them with text messages or phone calls on numbers that people don't recognize. And that has been really tricky because I know that I had people saying to me, I think this is a scam. And having to say, actually, I don't think that one is, but please do call FEMA to double check or go to the FEMA folks who were at the disaster recovery centres to always double check if you're not sure. I'm glad the people who talked to me had the instinct to think it was a scam because of everything I've told them about. But it's good to know that there is always a way to check. And then I also have Amy has her hand up. Go ahead, Amy.
Thanks, Steph. The one thing that I would say, we've been talking a lot about prevention and how to avoid scams and predatory conduct. But if there's someone who knows of someone or who has themselves already fallen prey to something like this, it doesn't mean that there's no help out there, that the money is gone completely or there's no hope of any kind of recovery and no legal rights. So please reach out to a legal services organization or a financial counselor to talk a little bit more about your rights in that situation.
Yeah, one other thing I would say is I would also insist on getting a police report. You will find that you'll go to police stations and police officers will say, I can't take a report about that. But it is theft and they can take a report about it. And you should absolutely insist that they do so. And if you don't get the answer you want, insist on going higher up because they do have a duty to take those reports. And if they get enough of them, they may actually be able to act on them. So please make sure you do that because those reports can be very useful when making claims down the line.
And what a lot of people don't realize, particularly when it comes to scams that involve money having been taken out of your bank account, the scammer may be gone, but your bank has an obligation to investigate what happened. And we actually see a lot of examples of banks not doing that properly. Anyone who's been in that situation and tried to report something often feel like they get the runaround or are told that it's their fault. Because of the bank's legal obligations to investigate these crimes when they happen and their frequent failure to do so adequately, there are actually attorneys out there who can help people in that situation where a bank compounds the stress of a financial crime by not adequately investigating and assisting their customer. So it's something to think of to keep in mind because we often think about going after the scammers to try and get your money back, but banks have a responsibility there as well. And if you're not successful in recovering your funds, that can be an alternative way to get some redress for what occurred if the bank is not meeting their obligations.
Those are, oh, go ahead, Steph.
No, go ahead, Dani, but I have a question in a moment. So you carry on and then I'll come to the question.
Yeah, I was just going to say this presentation didn't go into detail on reporting fraud, but you always want to dispute any fraudulent charges with your bank and with your credit agency. Even if you were scammed by, a Venmo payment or any kind of wire transfer, you always want to go to the source of the problem to contest those charges. And that's where having a police report, as Steph mentioned, can be really helpful. So it is good to insist on that, even though they may give you a hard time.
So, Dani, we have a question here. Is there help for a person who has a GoFundMe fund and it's legit, but the monies have not been released?
That's a great question. I haven't heard of that issue, so I would need to look into it a little bit more. I know that GoFundMe pages are go through some vetting, which is wonderful up front, and they have their own internal policies. So I probably would first, check with the source about, why the funds aren't being released. But I guess I would need to look into that a little bit more.
And Gerlandi, who is listed as tech support, but is actually a senior attorney at Public Counsel, did you want to say anything there?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry. It's I'm misreading what's in the question. Okay, a follow-up question. I've done everything to be compliant, my lease and everything they've asked for, but they're holding everything that was collected. So I think this is probably just a very specific question, and I would encourage you to apply for services at one of our organizations to see if, there's any further investigation could be done that could help you. I'm trying to think if there are any, I don't think so. I'm just trying to think whether the DFPI or any regulatory agency might have
Oversight?
Oversight. Thank you. That is the word I was looking for, Dani. I'm not sure, but yeah, do apply, and if we can figure that out for you, we can look at that. Any other questions? And I think the answer is, so, I mean, you know, both Tzedek and Public Counsel who are here have online intake systems. So you can visit our website. Just so you know, we also do have like income eligibility guidelines and other eligibility guidelines. But to the extent that either one of us, you could apply to either or both. Okay, I think that is all our questions. I know it says there's one in the chat, but it's one that we had before that has actually been answered. Okay, if there are no more questions, I would like to say a huge thank you to the wonderful Dani Kaiserman. Always a pleasure to have you in the house. Same to Amy from Tzedek. Thank you so much. I'd like to give a shout out to all the members of our collaborative whose websites are on screen here. Everyone has been part of this effort, and it has been, you know, a really great thing that we've all been able to do together. And last but not least, I want to say a big thank you to the Language Justice team. I am very sad I won't be spending so much time with you. We've really got to know each other over these past few weeks. So thank you very much indeed to all of you. And good evening. And we'll be doing some more activities soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Steph. Have a great night, everyone.
You too. Bye.